Wouldn't you like to know? Doing it fight with Revero. Really at the radio. Tired of the mainstream media's lies. Listening to Michael video in your eyes. Doing it fight with Revero. Really at the radio. Really at the radio.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. You know, way back in 2003 when we were being fed this whole Saddam's weapons of mass destruction, and the corporate media just stood there shoulder to shoulder with the government and said, oh, yes, they're buying yellow cake uranium from Niger. They have germs. They have chemicals. They have nuclear bombs. All those corporate media reporters who didn't do the due diligence. Where are they now? Well, they're actually still working for the corporate media. Just a little something to think about as the Pentagon launches its new Goebbels-esque PR battle to win the minds of the American public, convince you of the rightness of torture, drone murder, and sending more of your kids to die in wars on the other side of the world, to shackle their natural resources to the not quite so mighty U.S. dollar here. Speaking of the economy, we're starting to see some very troubling indications on the horizon, and I know that's kind of a repeat. There have been troubling indications for a long time, but just like that huge storm that's about to hit the Northeast, there are some serious and very impressive storm clouds out there. Now, the stock market today opened down, went way down. It's struggling back up now. The PPT is out there trying to get back into the green here. But if you look at the volume was very heavy while the market was going down, which means a lot of people are selling off. And the volume is very light as the market goes up, which means your institutional, financial institutions on Wall Street are buying huge blocks to try and get the market back up there. But we're seeing more and more of these stories where do Wall Street insiders expect something really big to happen very, very soon. And they're looking for the signs where some of the insiders seem to be doing things that may indicate their concern of a major market downturn. Now, again, we can expect those Wall Street institutions who are allowed to do high-speed computer trading. We can expect the government. We can expect the plunge protection team to do everything they can to keep the stock market up. Because all of those Wall Street banks and investment houses own huge blocks of stock, and they appear on their balance sheets. If there is a major fall in the stock market, all these too-big-to-fail banks will fail, because they'll be instantly insolvent. That's the real motive for this constant gaming, trying to drive the stock market up, to keep the banks technically solvent. In the real world, yeah, they're already gone. They're just trying to prop up a dead carcass here. Doug Cass is saying he's getting the summer of 1987 feeling. This is over at Investment Watch blog, saying that he's seeing the same kind of behavior on the market that led to just before that huge crash. And again, that crash in the 80s was in part triggered by the volatility that was created by high-frequency computer trading. And they very wisely and prudently banned high-frequency trading in the aftermath of that crash in the 80s. And then Wall Street paid whatever campaign contributions it took to be allowed to go back to doing exactly the same thing that led to the crash in the 1980s. Now, somebody has spotted, and this is from the Trenches World Report, that there has been a huge options trade that amounts to an $11.25 million bet that the stock market is going to go down sometime in the next 60 days. It's a massive short sell. It's a derivative where somebody has bet $11.25 million. The market's going to go way, way down. Meanwhile, they're also noting that the volatility index is at near historic lows, which means the small investors are already gone. They've had enough of this stuff. We're watching the big banks and Wall Street firms just sort of churn and game the system, so they've got a number at the end of the day they can wave at everybody and say, see, everything is just fine. But we've got this report coming out of UBS from Art Cashin saying that it's a very suspicious indicator. Somebody somewhere thinks something bad's going to happen in the next 60 days. We know just before 9/11, there was a lot of very suspicious short selling going against all those airlines. Some of it tracked back to Buzzy Krongard, who was, I think, at the time, number 3 man at CIA. Some of it tracked back to a lot of Israeli investors. Some of it, they don't know where it went because whoever made those short sales apparently got spooked they were going to be uncovered, and they never even came in to pick up their money. Now, earlier in the week, we were talking about how Virginia is considering minting their own state-issued gold and silver coins to have a currency ready to go if the Federal Reserve, when the Federal Reserve collapses. Apparently, Texas is now preparing to do exactly the same thing. How to run their own economy internally if they had to be self-sufficiency. They're talking about sovereignty down there. There's a couple of independence movements in Texas, mostly predicated on the fact that Texas statehood is illegal, that Congress did not have the right to simply annex Texas and declare it to be a state under the Constitution. If you go back and you look at the history of a lot of the states of the Union, the federal government did not follow the letter of the law. We had that situation here in Hawaii during the Clinton administration. Clinton signed a public law apologizing for the illegal annexation of Hawaii and turning it into a U.S. territory. And if it was illegal for Hawaii to be a U.S. territory, then its statehood is illegal. And there were some problems with its plebiscite vote as well. So the government loves to break the laws, even as they wag their finger at you and say, you obey these laws. It's legal for us to be doing this. You obey those laws. Now Obama's trying to claim that drone strikes are legal, which reminds us all that everything Adolf Hitler and the Nazis did in Germany was the letter of the German law. They were obeying the law. Didn't make them right. Same thing with Stalin. Everything he did in the Soviet Union was the letter of the law. It was what the government said was legal. Didn't make that right either. So as Obama and the Department of Justice go around saying, oh, it's legal for us to torture, and it's legal for us to murder innocent people with drones. It may be the law. It doesn't mean it's right. And it is up to the American people to decide for themselves what is right and what is wrong. Because it is ultimately a moral choice, and morality is a personal decision. It is not something to be mandated by the government or any corporatized spiritual institution. You cannot legislate morality without creating dangerous, damaging social instabilities here. All right, getting back to the money here, and it's interesting, we're already hearing all these so-called think tanks are basically coming to the same conclusion. Oh, the way we can fix this economy and all this debt, we have to raise taxes. Raising taxes, the only solution, we have to go along with it. Well, these think tanks are definitely not connected with the real world. For a very simple reason, whether it's Great Britain, where this article came out of, or the United States of America, there is nothing left to tax out here. I know it is an article of faith among the money junkies that somewhere out there is the 11th marble. Somewhere out there in the vast hinterland, there's a vast untapped pool of wealth, and we just have to figure out a way to scam it to ourselves, and all will be well. No, it won't. You already scammed all the real wealth of this country. You've already got all the currency in cash. There's not enough out here to keep the nation running. We're seeing businesses are failing because people that owe them money can't pay. Because the people that owe them money can't pay. Because the people that owe them money can't pay. Because all the available currency with which all these bills could be paid has been sucked away for Wall Street bailouts and endless war. And as they talk about a solution to the economy, they're talking about, well, we got to take a little bit more away from the people because we've got to protect that war budget. We got to protect that military-industrial complex. By the way, the top marginal tax rates are now above 50% in California, New York, and Hawaii. Huzzah, huzzah, we'll solve our budgetary problems by raising taxes. We're going to tax the rich now because the poor don't have anything left. I wondered why all those top earners seem to be moving away from Hawaii. You can't do that. You can't just go on raising taxes and think that's a solution because the people paying those taxes are going to leave. Saw that in France already. That is having repercussions. Over in the European Union, Germany and France have been backstopping much of the underwriting for Europe's nations that are in troubles. And by the way, they're having violent food riots in Greece right now. So France has gone on this thing about saying, well, we're just going to raise taxes on the rich here, and, we're going to grow the public sector. We're going to solve our unemployment by creating millions of new government jobs, and they'll be working for the government. They'll be getting a paycheck to put stickers on something that we don't think is particularly safe. And that's absolutely the wrong direction to go. And so France, their economic indicators are going into a tailspin. And Germany is already holding special hearings to find out what will Germany do if France collapses. And I'll bet you it's not going to say, yes, we'll shovel more of the Germans' people into the European Union. I think Germany is making preparations to leave. I think that's one of the reasons they wanted their gold back. They're getting ready to go back to a gold-backed Deutschmark as their internal currency. And remember, when Europe falls apart, there are $90 trillion worth of outstanding derivatives sold by Wall Street against Europe's debt that will come due. And Wall Street does not have that money to pay those claims. No problem, we'll just turn around and get another bailout from the U.S. government. And they'll just start printing up $90 trillion over there at the Federal Reserve and say, here, big stacks of paper. Doesn't that look really impressive? It's not going to fool anybody. They will crush down the dollar to save themselves from the fact that they basically destroyed this nation's economy through fraud. Going back 100 years with this Ponzi scheme central bank. And yes, as that caller said, I know I repeat this stuff a lot, but it's relevant. And it's important you understand what is going on and share it with everyone you know. Because when it all starts coming apart, I will guarantee you, the government is going to try and find some way to say, it's all your fault. You, the American people, failed us. Because that's what Hitler did to the Germans in the declining days of World War II. Oh, it wasn't his failed military strategies and the fact that he was imagining military units that didn't exist. Oh, no, you, the German people, have betrayed my vision for the 1,000-year Reich. We'll see exactly the same thing here in the United States. It's not our fault. It's Al-Qaeda, it's Iran, it's the Chinese, it's the Venezuelans, it's you, the American people. You let us down. All we asked for was all of your wealth and all of your children, and you were too stingy to comply. I guarantee you it's going to happen. These people in Washington, D.C. and Wall Street are not people with a sense of personal responsibility for anything. They didn't get to those positions of wealth and power by being personally responsible for the mistakes they made. I screwed up? Well, we'll dump it on this minor clerk and fire him. And so they're incapable of owning and accepting their own mistakes that have destroyed what used to be the greatest nation on earth. So they're going to find some way to blame you for it. Oh, it's those gosh darn truthers. It's those tax honesty people and this nonsense about the 16th Amendment not being ratified. How dare they impugn the honor and reputation of the U.S. government? Harumph, 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 harumph. Meanwhile, we're seeing more indications of a global currency war starting to escalate, which is going to harm ordinary people in every one of the countries participating in that, and of course is one of the final steps before real war. Remember, World War II was preceded by the global boycott against Germany in response to their state bank and value-issued currency. More and more people are beginning to look at, and this is again from Investment Watch blog, the European House of Cards is about to collapse. They can't find that 11th marble. And that's really what it comes down to, and that is the fatal flaw in all of these private central banks. They don't want you to know about it, but we do now. And because of all this stuff about Europe getting ready to collapse and the panic over the fact that they can't keep this economic system working because it was doomed from the start, it had a fatal design flaw. And I reprised that article, All Wars Are Bankers' Wars. That's getting a lot of reading. I was looking at the server log the other night. A lot of people still reading that, passing that around. And it does make sense. It's always the money junkies. They love wars. They don't have to fight in them. Their kids don't have to fight in them. Other people die in them by the 100 millions. And it doesn't matter because wars are the bankers' richest harvest. And they're drooling. They want this new world war just so badly, and they'll do anything to get it. Anyway, interestingly enough, down on New Zealand's main broadcaster, they ran a story in a video. What if you were told the money a bank lent you never existed? And so the word is getting out about how this private central bank scam works. That you are borrowing money that never existed until you signed the loan agreement, but you have to pay that loan back with money that you work for. You have to do what somebody who has those little paper tickets tells you to do. Those are the chains of your enslavement. That Federal Reserve note, or its New Zealand equivalent. That's your slave chain right there. The bankers aren't loaning out anything of value. They just type it into a computer. Or they run the printing press a little bit. It's just ink and paper to them. But you must repay those loans with full work value, plus accruing interest. That is your slavery right there on display. Now, we've been talking about this brouhaha over at Brooklyn College regarding this panel on the boycott and divestment movement against Israel. And all of Israel's minions were trying to shut it down, including government officials who said, we're going to cut the funding to your school if you dare have this. And somewhat surprisingly, New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg came out criticizing those officials. How dare you interfere with academic freedom? If you want to go to a university where the government decides what you are exposed to, go to a school in North Korea. And I'm a little surprised given Bloomberg's prior attitudes about Israel, but good for him. And he's absolutely right. Universities are supposed to be where young people are exposed to competing, contradictory, controversial ideas so they can make their own choices about the world they want to build after they graduate. So tip of the hat to Michael Bloomberg on that one. I'm going to have to take back some of the bad things I said about him. Alrighty, we're coming to another commercial break. When we come on back, more about the BDS panel. A lot of people don't know. Phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back.